My name is Sarah, and I've never been particularly superstitious. Sure, I'd heard the stories about haunted houses and creepy neighbors, but I never thought they'd be real until I moved into the old house on Moss Street. It wasn't the most charming place. It was a bit run down, a fixer-upper, but it was affordable, and I needed somewhere to stay. The house had a reputation, sure. It had been abandoned for years, and the neighbors would always give me strange looks when I mentioned it, but I brushed it off. There was no way those old rumors could be true, right? At first, everything seemed fine. The creaky floors, the cold spots, they were just the house settling, I thought. But then, the knocking started. It began a week after I moved in. Around midnight, I'd hear a knock at the front door. Just a single, loud thump. I'd rush to check, but no one would be there. The first few times, I assumed it was a mistake, maybe someone knocking on the wrong door. But as the nights went on, the knocks grew more persistent, louder, harder, more demanding. The thing was, I never saw anyone when I opened the door. There was never a person standing outside, just the empty street. One night, I decided to wait and see. I sat by the door, watching the clock, counting down the minutes until midnight. Sure enough, when the clock struck 12, there it was, the knock. I stood up, slowly, and grabbed a flashlight. As I reached for the door handle, the knock came again, louder this time, almost as if it was coming from inside the house. I froze. The knock came from the back door. My heart pounded in my chest as I moved to the back of the house. The door was locked, just like I'd left it. I could hear breathing, heavy, uneven breaths, like someone was just on the other side, waiting. I couldn't bring myself to open the door. Instead, I crept back upstairs, locking the bedroom door behind me. That night, the knocking didn't stop. It came from every door in the house, one by one, as if something was walking from room to room, trying to get in. The next morning, I checked every door, every window, but nothing seemed out of place. A week passed, and the knocking returned, but this time, it wasn't just at midnight. It was at all hours, morning, afternoon, night, always the same knock. Always at the door, always when I was alone. It never stopped. I called the police, but when they arrived, they found nothing. No fingerprints, no signs of forced entry. They thought I was just imagining things then. One night I saw it, the figure. It was standing in the window, a shadow, tall and thin, with long arms. It didn't knock, it just stared. I've moved out now, but every night, I hear that same knock. Knock, 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 in my dreams, on my windows, in my mind. I don't know who or what it was, but I'm sure of one thing. It's still out there, and it's still knocking. My name is Liam, and I used to think I knew what fear was. I watched horror movies, read scary stories, and thought I could handle anything. That was before I moved into my new house on Wright Street. I got a great deal on the place. The house was old, but it had character, and it was spacious. I was excited to start fresh, but from the moment I moved in, something felt off. The first night, I noticed the stairs. The house had an old staircase that creaked every time I walked up or down. Nothing too strange about it, right? But every time I was on the stairs, I felt something was watching me from behind. I tried to shake it off, telling myself it was just my imagination. But then it happened. I saw the shadow. I was coming down the stairs one evening when I glanced at the top, and there, in the dim light, I saw the outline of a figure standing at the top of the stairs. It was tall, but its features were blurred, like a shadow that didn't belong. I froze. My heart pounded, but I told myself it was just a trick of the light. The next day, I checked the stairs again. The house was empty, quiet. No one else had moved in yet. But that night, the shadow returned. It was darker, more defined, standing right at the top of the stairs, staring down at me. I backed away slowly, trying not to make a sound, but then, I heard something. A voice, faint but clear, whispering from the darkness, "Come upstairs." I bolted out of the house and didn't return for hours, but when I came back, the shadow was gone. I thought maybe I had just been tired, seeing things. But then it happened. Again, each night, the shadow would appear, standing there at the top of the stairs, watching me, and every time, I would hear the whisper, "Come upstairs." It wasn't just a hallucination anymore. It was real, and it wanted something from me. One night, I decided to face it. I climbed the stairs, my heart racing. The air felt cold and thick as I neared the top. When I reached the final step, I turned around to face the shadow. But it wasn't just standing there anymore. The figure moved. It slowly descended the stairs, one step at a time, never taking its eyes off me. Its form was more solid now, like it was made of the darkness itself. I couldn't move. I couldn't breathe. As it reached the bottom of the stairs, it stopped and stood right in front of me. I could feel its cold breath on my face, but I couldn't bring myself to look directly at it. I closed my eyes and prayed for it to go away. When I opened them again, the shadow was gone. The stairs were empty. I haven't been able to stay in that house since. The shadow still follows me, even when I leave. It's always there, waiting for me to return to the stairs. My name is Ethan, and I've always been a bit of a loner. I don't mind it much. I prefer my own company, staying at home, gaming, and chatting online. I never thought it would be a problem until the texts started coming in. It all began a few months ago. I was playing a new game, completely immersed, when my phone buzzed. I glanced at the screen to see a text from an unknown number. "I see you." I thought it was a prank, just someone messing around, maybe a friend of a friend, trying to get a laugh. But as the days went by, the texts kept coming. They were simple at first, almost cryptic. "Where are you right now? I know you're not alone. I can hear you breathing." At first, I didn't take it seriously. I figured it was someone trolling me, maybe using a fake number. But then they started mentioning things only I could know. "I saw you leave your apartment this morning. Nice shirt you wore to the store. You shouldn't have gone to the park last night." I couldn't ignore it anymore. I started getting paranoid, checking my locks, looking out the windows to make sure no one was lurking around. But no one was ever there. I tried blocking the number, but it didn't matter. The texts kept coming, each one more chilling than the last. "I'm behind you right now. I know what you're watching on TV. You left your front door open." I stopped going outside. I stopped using my phone, leaving it in a drawer for days at a time. But still, the texts found their way to me. No matter what I did, it felt like the stalker knew everything about me. One night, I got a text that nearly made me lose my mind. "I'm in your apartment." I froze. I had locked every door, every window. No one was supposed to be here. Panic set in as I grabbed a flashlight and started searching every room. The place was empty, not a soul in sight. But when I went to the bathroom, I found something that made my blood run cold. A note was taped to the mirror. "I told you I would be watching." The worst part, the handwriting was mine. I haven't heard from the stalker in weeks, but I can still feel their presence. I'm afraid to sleep, afraid to leave my apartment, and every time my phone buzzes, I can't help but wonder, is it them? Whoever they are, they're still out there, watching, waiting. My name is Carla, and I've always been skeptical about things like ghosts or supernatural occurrences. I used to think that people who believed in them were just scared of the unknown, but that was before I moved into my apartment. The apartment was cheap, a bit run down, but it had a great view. I could see the entire city from the large window in the living room, which was what sold me. The first few nights, everything was peaceful, but soon, strange things started happening. At night, I would wake up to the feeling of someone watching me. It wasn't just the sense of being observed, it was something more. I could feel eyes on me, staring through the darkness. I checked the locks, closed the blinds, and made sure everything was secure. Yet, that feeling never went away. Eventually, I decided to look out the window at night to see if maybe there was someone standing outside, maybe just a passerby or a curious neighbor. The first time I checked, there was no one. The street was empty. But the next night, I saw a figure standing across the street, staring directly at my window. It was too far away for me to make out any details, but I could feel the intensity of their gaze. I shrugged it off, thinking it was just some random person. But then, every night, the figure would appear at exactly the same time, always standing in the same spot. I tried closing the blinds, but somehow, the feeling of being watched didn't go away. I'd wake up in the middle of the night and see their silhouette through the blinds, unmoving, just staring. One night, I decided to confront the person. I opened the window and called out, "Hey, what are you doing there?" But no one answered. The figure didn't even move. I pulled the blinds down quickly, heart racing, and went back to bed. But that night, the feeling of eyes on me grew worse. It was as if the figure was right there in the room with me. The next night, I waited until I couldn't take it anymore. I opened the blinds cautiously and peered out. The figure was there again, standing perfectly still. But this time, I noticed something terrifying. It wasn't just a person. There was something wrong with their face, something that didn't make sense. Their eyes were wide open, unblinking, but their mouth was a thin line, almost stretched, too far. It didn't look human anymore. I slammed the window shut and locked it immediately. I haven't seen the figure since, but I still feel its presence sometimes, especially when I'm alone at night. I don't know who or what it was, but it's still out there, waiting for me to look again, and I won't. My name is James, and I've always believed in logic. There's an explanation for everything, right? That's what I thought, until I moved into this old house. The house was inexpensive, and I didn't think twice about it when I first saw. It had character-old wooden floors, creaky stairs, and an ancient smell that seemed to come from the very walls. But what drew me in the most was the spiral staircase that led up to the second floor. It was the kind of staircase that seemed to belong in a storybook, twisting upward with an almost magical allure. The first few nights, everything was normal. But then, it started. The sounds. I woke up one night to a scratching noise. It was faint, but enough to pull me out of my sleep. At first, I thought it was just the house settling. But then the noise grew louder scratching, followed by dragging. It was coming from the top of the stairs, just outside my bedroom door. I stayed completely still, my heart pounding in my chest. The sound wasn't normal, it was too deliberate, too unnatural. Then, I heard something else, a soft creaking. The floorboards of the staircase were shifting, as if something was walking up the stairs. I got out of bed, slowly creeping toward the door, trying to make sense of what I was hearing. My hand hovered over the doorknob, but before I could open it, the noise stopped. Dead silence. I opened the door and turned on the lights, hoping to see nothing. But what I saw stopped me in my tracks. At the top of the stairs, there was a shadow. Not a person, just a dark, formless mass, standing perfectly still. It didn't move, but I could feel its presence. My body went cold, and I backed away from the door without even realizing it. The shadow disappeared almost immediately, vanishing into the thin air as if it had never been there. The next few nights were even worse. The sounds returned, but this time, they weren't just confined to the stairs. Something I don't know what was pacing through the house. The scratching would come first, followed by dragging, and then whispering voices, faint but unmistakable, would fill the air. I would hear the unmistakable sound of footsteps moving up and down the stairs, but when I checked, no one was there. One night, I decided to face whatever was haunting me. I gathered all the courage I could and climbed the stairs. As I reached the top, I saw it again, the shadow. now standing directly in front of me, just beyond the railing. I tried to speak, to say something, but no words came out. I reached out to it, trembling, and as soon as my hand touched the banister, the shadow lunged forward with a deafening screech. I ran. I haven't been back to that house since. The thing on the stairs is still there, waiting. I don't know what it wants, but I'm sure of one thing: it will never let me leave. My name is Sophie, and I never thought I'd be the kind of person to get scared of a shadow in the dark. But something happened to me a few nights ago that changed everything. It was around midnight when I first noticed it. I was lying in bed, scrolling through my phone, when I saw a figure pass by the window. At first, I didn't think much of it. Maybe it was the wind, or a neighbor out for a late-night walk. But then I saw it again, this time, closer to my window. I pulled the curtains back just a bit and looked out. There was no one there. I brushed it off, trying to calm my nerves. But as the days went on, the figure returned. Every night, just after midnight, I'd see it move past the window, a shadow, tall and dark, with no distinguishing features. It moved quickly, almost too fast for me to make out, and every time I'd check, the figure was gone before I could get a clear look. I started locking my doors and windows before bed, but it didn't stop. One night, I decided to stay up, hoping to catch a glimpse of who or what it was. I watched the window for hours, holding my breath each time I heard a noise. And then, at exactly 12:15 a.m., it happened again. The figure appeared, but this time, it didn't move past the window. It stopped, right in front of the glass. I could feel its presence, like a weight in the air. Slowly, I pulled back the curtains, just enough to look, and then, my heart skipped a beat. Two eyes, glowing. They stared back at me from the darkness, unblinking and cold. I stumbled back, my breath catching in my throat. I wanted to scream, but no sound came out. I froze, unable to move, and just when I thought I might pass out from fear, the eyes vanished. The next day, I installed motion sensors around my house, hoping it would stop whatever was happening. But that night, I saw it again. This time, the eyes were in the hallway. I woke up to the sound of breathings, low, heavy breaths, coming from the darkness just beyond my door. I grabbed my phone to call for help, but when I turned the light on, I saw nothing. And now, every night, when I lie in bed, I feel those eyes watching me, lurking in the dark. I can hear the breathing, just outside my door, waiting for the right moment. I don't know who or what is following me, but I'm starting to think it's not just a person. It's something far worse. And it's still out there, waiting. My name is Ethan, and I've always been the type of person who enjoys quiet walks at night. I find it peaceful, with the world around me almost still except for the occasional passing car or the distant hum of city lights. But a few weeks ago, everything changed. It started when I noticed someone was following me on my nightly walks. At first, I thought it was just a coincidence, another walker out at the same time, taking the same path. But as the days went on, the feeling of being followed became impossible to ignore. Every time I glanced behind me, I would see no one, but I could hear footsteps steady, deliberate, just behind me. I'd speed up, and so would the footsteps. I'd slow down, and they'd match my pace. I tried turning down different streets, hoping to lose whoever it was, but no matter what, they were always there, just out of sight. Sometimes, I would hear heavy breathing mixed with the footsteps, and it sent a chill down my spine. One night, after a particularly long walk, I turned onto my street, and I finally decided to confront the shadow I felt behind me. I stopped dead in my tracks, my pulse racing. "Who's there?" I called out, my voice trembling. The footsteps stopped. I stood still, listening, hoping to hear a response, but there was nothing, only silence. And then, without warning, I felt a cold breath on the back of my neck. I spun around, but once again, there was no one there. The next night, I didn't go out. I stayed home, locking every door and window. But I couldn't shake the feeling that someone was watching me around midnight. My phone buzzed. It was a text from an unknown number. "I've been following you for weeks." I froze. My blood ran cold. There was no name, just the haunting message. The texts kept coming. They were always simple, but the words felt like ice, cutting through my nerves. "I see you. I'm getting closer." And then the worst one, "You'll never be alone again." I don't know if the person was ever really behind me that night, or if I was just imagining it. But now, every step I take feels like I'm being hunted. Every noise in the dark feels like someone is just around the corner, waiting to take that last step forward, and I know they're still following me. My name is Lily, and I live alone in a small house on the outskirts of town. It's a quiet, peaceful place where I can get away from everything, or at least, that's what I thought. It all started a month ago when I noticed something strange. Every time I came home from work, my front door would be slightly ajar. At first, I thought I was just forgetful, but the feeling of unease began to build. I started locking everything: windows, doors, even the garage. But no matter what I did, the door would always be cracked open by just an inch dot. Then, one night, it escalated. I was sitting in my living room, watching TV, when I heard a soft knock on the window. It wasn't a loud knock, more like a tap. I hesitated for a moment, then slowly got up to look out. There was no one there. The next night, the knock came. Again. But this time, it wasn't just one tap, it was a series of fast knocks. I rushed to the window, heart racing, and pulled back the curtains. There, standing outside, was a man wearing a blank, white mask. His eyes were wide open, staring at me with a cold intensity. I stepped back, trying to steady my breath, but when I looked again, he was gone. I bolted the door and called the police, but by the time they arrived, there was no sign of anyone. They checked the area and found nothing suspicious, but I knew he was still out there. The knocks came every night after that. Sometimes they were louder, sometimes softer, and each time he was wearing that same mask. I could hear his breathing outside my window, but I never saw his face again. One night, I decided to do something about it. I waited by the window, staring into the darkness. After hours of waiting, I finally heard the familiar knock. My heart raced as I slowly pulled back the curtain, ready to confront him. But this time, there was no mask, just empty, hollow eyes staring back at me from the window. I haven't heard from him since that night, but I can't help but feel like he's still watching. Every time I go to bed, I check the windows, and every time, I wonder if he's out there, waiting. My name is James, and I never thought much of late-night calls. I'm a heavy sleeper, so a phone call in the middle of the night usually just goes unnoticed. But one call changed everything. It started 2 weeks ago. I was lying in bed, about to drift off, when my phone rang. I didn't think it was important, just some spam. I tried to ignore it, but it rang again. This time I answered. The voice on the other end was disturbingly calm. "I'm watching you." I froze. My throat tightened. I was sure it was some kind of prank, but the voice sounded so real, so chilling. I hung up. The calls kept coming. Every night, at exactly 3:33 a.m. The same voice, saying the same thing. "I'm watching you." I tried blocking the number, but the calls came from different numbers every time. One night, I decided to confront it. I answered the call again. "Who is this?" I demanded. The voice laughed. "I told you. I'm watching you, and I'll never stop." I hung up, my heart pounding in my chest. The next morning, I checked my front door. There was nothing. But as I turned to go back inside, I noticed something. There was a note on my doorstep. I picked it up. The note simply read, "I see you. I don't know how, but the calls have stopped for now. But every night, I still check the windows, the door just to make sure no one's out there. Because now I know. The person who was calling wasn't just stalking me on the phone. They were already inside my life, watching me every moment, and I can't shake the feeling they're still watching. My name is Rachel, and I've always considered myself an independent woman. I live alone in a small apartment on the edge of town. It's quiet, secluded, perfect for someone who enjoys her privacy. But recently, I've been feeling, watched it. Started with small things. A shadow in the corner of my vision when I looked out my window, or the sound of footsteps in the hall when I was sure no one was there. At first, I thought it was just my imagination, but the feeling didn't go away. One night, I decided to stay up late, watching a movie. It was around 2 a.m. when I saw it. I glanced at the window and froze. There was someone standing outside, just beyond the glass. He was looking at me. I couldn't make out his face clearly, but I could see his eyes, piercing, unblinking, staring directly at me. The man didn't move, didn't blink. It felt like hours passed before he slowly stepped back into the darkness. My heart raced, and I immediately ran to the door to lock it. But when I turned around, the window was completely clear. Nothing was there. I checked the security cameras, but there was no sign of anyone. I thought I was losing my mind. The next day, I installed better locks, reinforced everything. I was paranoid, but it didn't matter, because that night, he was back. This time, he was standing closer to the window, so close I could make out the outline of his face. He smiled at me, and it wasn't a friendly smile. It was something darker. Something that made my blood run cold. I grabbed my phone to call the police, but before I could dial, he vanished. I thought I was safe, but then, my phone buzzed. I received a text. It was a picture of me from inside my apartment, taken through the window. The message said, "I'm closer than you think. I never felt safe in my apartment again." The stalking didn't stop, and every time I look out the window, I wonder, is he watching me now?